Hi there, and welcome to episode 40 of Mad Knitting. My name is Susan, my pronouns are she, her, hers, and I am coming to you from Madison, Wisconsin, where I work from home and I live with my husband and two teenage children. It is May the 9th, 2023. It's a beautiful Tuesday. Spring in Wisconsin was a long time coming. This is often the case. And boy, when it arrives all at once. So that's the case today. I've got dandelions all over my yard. Everything is growing. I've got asparagus coming up, which is very exciting. And yeah, it's just nice out there, which we've all been waiting for a long time. I work for a nonprofit and I work from home. So when my schedule is light on meetings and deadlines, as it is this week, that means that I can record videos during the day. I've also got bread baking. I don't know if you can hear my oven humming, but it sort of clicks on and off as it's going. So if you hear that in the background, that's what's going on. I created this YouTube channel because, like thousands of other people on the internet, I like to talk to the internet about knitting and fiber arts and crafting and all those things. So today I have, sadly, just one finished object to show you, a few works in progress, and one sewing item. So let's get into it, right? Here's my finished object, finally. If you are not new to the channel, if you watched the last few episodes, you have seen these. I made socks for my dad for his birthday. His birthday was in April, so these are quite late, I'm afraid. And the reason they were not finished on time is that I got all the way through the first sock, went swimmingly, no problem. Second sock, I was well into the toe decreases, so I was nearly done with it before I noticed that something seemed off, and sure enough, I had just cast on fewer stitches for the second sock and didn't notice until I was nearly done with it. I'm not sure what went wrong there, why I was so absent-minded when I cast on, and why it took me so long to figure it out, but it meant that I had to rip it all out and start over. And I did finish, of course, but it means they're late. Now, my parents live in Kentucky and it's quite warm there. He's not going to need wool socks anytime soon, so no harm done really, but it would have been nice to get them done in time. Let me tell you some details. I didn't use a pattern for these because they're pretty basic and I just knit socks out of my head most of the time. I cast on 72 stitches with a size 1 needle. I worked in 2x2 ribbing for the cuff. And I added a contrasting color for stripes. This was inspired by Sarah Shira of the Imagine Landscapes podcast, who was making Tweety work socks for everyone in her family, and she was adding stripes in the cuff. I think she used her contrast color in other places in the sock too, but I didn't. Nevertheless, I thought the stripes were a cool idea, so I did that too. If you stretch out the ribbing, you can see that I did not bother to do anything like knit only to avoid the little awkwardness in the color change. That doesn't bother me. I just switched colors. One thing I should mention, where's the beginning of the round? See, I can't even find it. When I change colors in a striping pattern in the round, to avoid the little jog that happens when you change colors, sometimes what I like to do is when it's time for the color change, on the last stitch of that round, I will work the stitch with both yarns for the last stitch of one round and the first stitch of the next one. So I do that every time there's a color change, and that seems to help eliminate the jog without leaving a gap. That's what I did on these, and I have to say, here, I think this is it. I think this here is the beginning of the round, and it's really hard to tell. I think the fact that it's ribbing makes a difference also. So anyway, I'm very pleased with how these turned out. I used Knit Picks Stroll Tweed. So that is mostly superwash wool with some tweed and some nylon for strength. It is very nice and soft. I've used this yarn for hats and a baby sweater before, which were all given away. So I don't know how it holds up to hard wear, which socks will get more than hats or a baby sweater, or lots of washing. But I guess we'll see. I really like it. The brown is reindeer heather, and this cream color I used is oyster heather, which is a really nice kind of warm cream color, kind of a dark cream, which I think looks really nice with the brown. The one thing I would do different is if I do this again with the stripes, I would make sure they're centered vertically on the cuff. I just sort of winged it when I started these, so I did a good inch in the brown before I added the cream, and I knew that I wanted 3 stripes because I just feel like there's a nice kind of symmetry there. And then once I got through the 3 stripes, I realized that if I did another whole inch of ribbing in the brown, that cuff with the ribbing was going to be really, really tall, which I didn't think would be very comfortable. So I just stopped the ribbing when I thought it looked like the appropriate length and kept going. It's hard to see what I did for the heel, but it's what I almost always do. It's a heel flap and gusset. I use an Eye of Partridge stitch pattern on the heel flap, which is basically alternating your slip stitches, so they're kind of in a checkerboard pattern. And then I always do a little bit of a garter ridge down the edge to make it easier to pick up the stitches for the gusset. So that's how I do my socks. And now that I finally talked about them on camera, I can send them to my dad so he can pack them away for the fall, because I don't think he's going to need them anytime soon. And I hope they fit, you know? You never know. You never know when you can't actually try them on the foot in question, right? So that's my one finished object. I really thought I would have more done by today, but I've actually, through last week, I was incredibly busy with work and I didn't get as much knitting time during work as I usually do. I actually can knit a lot during work because I spend a lot of time typically in Zoom meetings, sometimes in webinars, and the way I get through those and stay focused is I knit, you know? But I just haven't had as much of that lately. I've also been working on a sweater, and of course those take a while, so let me show you progress on that. I did show this in my last episode. I'm calling this my Barbie sweater because there's so much pink in it. You guys, I don't even know what drew me to these colors, but I like it a lot. I really like how it's coming out. And I set this down to get started on something else that I'll talk about before I was quite done binding off. So I'm not even quite done binding off the body, but I have tried this on and I know that it fits. So thumbs up on that. So you can admire all the pink. This is probably the only pink thing I will make for myself. As much as I like it, I'm not like a pink lover. All right, so what do I say about this? I know I talked about the yarn when I introduced this in my last episode, but I have this cream colored or natural colored single ply merino superwash that I bought from someone's D-stash a couple of years ago. And when I bought it, I think I didn't realize that it was single ply. So when it arrived, I thought, ooh, what am I gonna do with this? Because single ply seems to me like it's not going to hold up terribly well, at least not on its own in a sweater project. I was not feeling inspired to put it in a shawl. So I just kind of let it sit and percolate while I thought about what to do. Then maybe a year after that, I discovered the whole world of combining like regular yarn, regular wool yarn with fingering weight or lace weight mohair silk or alpaca silk, you know, something fuzzy, and I'm a big fan. So I decided to do that for a sweater. So the pattern I'm using is called Kinsan. It's from Moon and Turtle by the Bergen sisters. Had to pause to check my bread, which is not quite done, and also grab the pattern book. So this is the book Moon and Turtle. It's by Sachiko and Kiyomi Bergen, who are twins, and they both are designers. And the pullover is a pretty basic like DK weight top down raglan. Here are a few of the pictures from the book, but they offer all these different ideas for how to put stripes in, how to do the stripes. And of course, you don't have to do stripes. You could do a plain color if that's what you want. You could do any color blocking if that's what you want, but I needed basically I needed the numbers, right, to do this. And I liked the striping sequence that one of the options that they had. So that's essentially what I'm doing. Now, the mohair silk yarns I'm using I have to be careful they don't get tangled, because if you've ever tried to untangle silk mohair, it is not fun. So this explosion of cotton candy, unicorn, whatever. I lost the label, so I do not remember the color name, but this is from Republica Unicornia. And it might be called Unicorn Smoothie. It might be called Unicorn Birthday Party. I'm not really sure, but you can see there's quite a lot of pink in it, like bubblegum pink, Barbie pink. Not really my thing usually. There are other colors too. There's a lot of different shades of pink, but there's some yellow and some aqua. I mean, it's kind of screaming early 90s to me. So this is all I have left of it. This was a 50 gram skein, 456 yards, and I have been weighing it. I think I've got about 12 or 13 grams left. So I'll have to be really careful. I might go ahead and split it in half before I even start the sleeves to make sure that those come out evenly. The other yarn I'm using is just Knit Picks Aloft. I really like Aloft. I've used it in a few things now, and it's, you know, they have good color selection. It's pretty affordable, and it's pretty soft. For me, this is not itchy at all. So this is the color, what is it? Cosmo, maybe? And I don't even know that I would characterize this as pink as much as magenta. So that's what I'm going with. This has 260 yards for 25 grams. So there's slightly more of this yardage wise than this. And I know I talked about the sort of management last time, but just to reiterate, the striping sequence I chose, I did of the hand-dyed. One of the reasons I wanted to stripe is because I don't like pooling and stuff from hand-dyed, plus I only had the one skein of it. I did 6 rounds of the hand-dyed, and then this next sequence with the skinnier stripes is a total of 10 rounds. So I would do the dark pink for 2, the hand-dyed for 2, the dark one for 2, the hand-dyed for 2, and the dark one for 2. So 5 stripes total, each one of them 2 rounds. So that means that I was using this yarn up faster than the solid color, which was by design, because I'm using the solid color only for the ribbing at the bottom. I will do the same for the neckline, partly because I think this color looks better next to my face than the paler colors. And I will also do that for the cuffs. And if I run out of this on the sleeves, I can just do more of the magenta for the bottom of the sleeve. So it kind of looks like it's dipped like that. It doesn't bother me. So that's the plan for this sweater. I kind of hoped I would get it done sooner, but I got sidetracked by some other things. And now that it's May, you know, we could have some chilly days coming up here in the next few weeks, but it's unlikely that I'll have much opportunity to wear this yet before fall, which is fine. In Wisconsin, it's sweater weather like between 8 and 9 months out of the year. So, you know, even if I'm not wearing this in midsummer, I know the time is coming before long that I will want to wear it. When I tried it on, it felt just lovely. It feels light as air. Like I said, it's not itchy for me at all. And I think it'll be very warm. So I'm very much looking forward to having this done. Oh, I should mention the needles I'm using. I'm using size 6 needles for most of the knitting, and I went down to a 4 for the ribbing. And I have had and sold a couple of different sets of interchangeable needles. And I don't know, I just haven't always liked them. They tend, you know, I find the joins don't always work very well. Sometimes the yarn catches in there, and they're not really my favorite thing. But when Knit Picks came out with these aluminum ones, they had them for 20% off not too long ago, and I decided to bite the bullet and go ahead and try them because I like having options for different lengths of needles, and I really like working with aluminum. I have some aluminum sock needles that I really like. So these are the 4s. They're color coded by size, which is handy because it helps you pick out what size you're using. They're nice and smooth. They're pointy without being too sharp. Like I find when needles are too sharp, I tend to poke them in my finger. And super sharp is really good for lace, but I don't do a lot of lace. So anyway, that's not important. And I have found that these have a pretty smooth join. It's been really nice. They're also very lightweight, which I think sometimes metal needles can get heavy. So all I've used is a size 4 for the ribbing, but so far I have enjoyed these. So yeah, just putting that out there that these needles are working for me. I don't always talk a ton about the tools I use. I tend to just find the needle in the right size and length that works for me, and I don't worry too much about what it's made out of. And I don't really care about what kinds of stitch markers I'm using. Aside from the function, like I'll use plain round ones just to keep track of how many stitches are on my needles, or I'll use the removable ones to track how many rows I've got, you know, or to mark something, you know, in the fabric, like if I want to mark where I split for an armhole or something. But I'm not into fancy stitch markers or matching anything, so I just don't talk about that much. Okay, I'm gonna pause here and check my bread. Okay, the bread is almost there, but not quite. I bake bread all the time. I've been baking bread for decades, literally. I think I learned when I was probably 10 years old. And still, sometimes it works out great, and sometimes it comes out a little flat. I think this batch rose a little too much, so it's kind of deflating a bit in the oven, but usually the family eats whatever I make, so I think it'll be okay. Okay, that's enough about that sweater. The next work in progress, I have showed you one of these before. I have been working on the Good Bear. This is a pattern by Susan B. Anderson. When you buy the electronic, well, I think all the copies are electronic, but when you buy it, it comes so that you can like print it out kind of into a foldable booklet, which is really cool. For some reason on my printer, it comes out so that it's upside down on one side, so it doesn't really work for me to like staple it up the spine because I'd be constantly flipping it around, but anyway. So You can buy kits on the Barrett Wool Company website for Good Bear and any number of other toy patterns she has developed. I just bought the pattern because I have plenty of yarn that would be appropriate. I'm using Reynolds Whiskey. Here's one of the tags. This was discontinued ages ago. And indeed, I bought it on sale maybe when it was being discontinued, like more than 10 years ago. I've had this for a long time. I made a sweater out of it and I had a bunch left over. And it's really too bad you can't get it anymore because it is really nice. I'm sure you can't read that because the print is tiny. But it's sport weight. It's, I think, 2-ply. It's very light, but sturdy at the same time. So it washes well, it blocks beautifully. It's beautiful for color work. That's the sweater I made, his color work. So this is the bear that I finished. I showed y'all this before. He's got little pants. He's got a little hat, and I took his sweater off because I think I might remake the sweater and use a bigger needle for the main body part because it's just a little too snug on him. Also, I don't know why I keep referring to this bear as him. I don't know why there has to be a gender assigned to this bear, but for some reason I've thought of this bear as a him. I don't know. You can see I have to pull it like way tight, and it's kind of, poor bear has a little gap between, like if he ever bent over, he'd have a little gap between the jacket and the top of the pants, and we don't like that. We don't want our bear to have like a plumber's butt situation. So I think the jacket just needs a little more room. I just haven't done it yet. Okay, so I'm showing you this because I have my brother's kid. My brother lives in Virginia with his family. He has 2 little girls. And I want to make each of them a bear. And, you know, at first I thought, oh, maybe I'll get them done by Easter, but that was way too ambitious. So these will just be done when they're done. So first bear is finished. Second bear, I know this is creepy. Second bear doesn't have eyes or a nose or a mouth yet. This just has markers to show where those are gonna go. I don't have safety eyes, I just embroider them. But I just wanted to show you. The 2 bears are identical, okay? But this one has different pants. These are little purple pants, or kind of a mauve lavender color. And I have to decide about the rest of the clothes. The pattern gives you 2 options for sweaters. There's this jacket that's like a little cardigan, and there's also a little colorwork pullover. So I think that's probably what I'm gonna do for this second one. I think I will use this pale tealish sky blue for the main color. And then there's 2 contrast colors in the colorwork on the yoke, and I think I'll use the same like mauvey color that I used for the pants, and then the bear yarn because it's very dark. Those will be the contrasts for the colorwork sweater. And the hat, of course I'll have to do another beanie. I might do another one out of this. I'm not really sure. The hats don't stay on terribly well. So poor bear's gonna have a cold head. But anyway, I should have these done soon. Let me tell you, because there's like, I have a little piece of paper where I check off my number of rounds to make sure I'm doing everything right. And I have to have stuffing on hand, and I have to change needles a lot because you use, you know, like you're using a couple different needle sizes to make the clothes. This is not a portable project for me at all. I actually keep it downstairs where my stash lives. We have exercise equipment and a TV down there. So what I've been doing is watching Perry Mason, like the remake they did for HBO, starring Matthew Rhys. So I'll watch this incredibly dark, gruesome, horrifying crime show that's very well done in my opinion, and then I'm making like the cutest little toys in the world for my sweet little nieces. So it's kind of, one's kind of balancing each other out, the other out, I guess. I don't know. If you've watched that show, let me know what you think, but no spoilers. I'm still in season 1. I've only watched like 5 episodes, I think. So yeah, it's grim, but it's gripping at the same time. So, bread check. Bread is done and out of the oven. Hooray! Now I can focus a little better. Okay, next work in progress. I had started this last time, and then I started over, and now I'm not sure what to do about it. So this is another sock, a plain sock. Let me find the yarn label to show you the yarn. I got this on sale from Webs. Web sales, man, they get me sometimes. Okay, it's a Lana Grossa yarn. It's called About Berlin Yak Color Block. Doesn't want to focus. So what is special about this yarn, it is 65% wool, 25% polyamide, and 10% yak. So that's a little extra special. That's why I wanted to try it. The colors are a little bit heathery, in part because of the way they dyed the yarn, but also because it's got that yak in it. So yak fibers, I think, are kind of a brown or gray color, so they tone everything down, even when there's only 10% content in there. I made another pair of socks out of a slightly different colorway, so a lot of this will probably be review if you have seen that episode or those episodes. I really like the colors in this. They're very, very earthy, kind of pastel. I cast on originally, okay, so my plan was to make these socks as a gift for someone. And this person has feet that are a little bit bigger than mine. So my plan originally was to cast on 68 stitches instead of 64 using size 1 needles. And then I thought the sock would fit better. But the ones that I made for myself that have 64 stitches fit really well to being ever so slightly loose. Like they do fit, but I definitely wouldn't want them any looser. So then I started to worry that maybe 68 stitches would make these too big, especially since I'm doing plain stockinette, right? So there's not like a lot, I'm not using a stitch pattern that will pull them in. So I thought, okay, start over. I ripped them out. I thought I'll just cast on 64 stitches, do the same thing I would for my own feet, only make them slightly longer to accommodate the slightly larger foot size for this person. Well, I don't know. Something just didn't seem to be working. For the short row heel, which I do a short row heel to keep it from interrupting the stripe sequence so much, I decided to do garter instead of regular stockinette, just because I didn't feel like purling. And I quite like the look of it, but I think maybe the garter heel is making it slightly shallower than if I had done stockinette. And then when I got to the toe decreases, like I got almost to the end and I tried it on my foot and it like just fits my foot. And then I thought, maybe it was a mistake to start over. Maybe I should have kept it at 68 stitches. And this is after a few days of working on it. And this person's birthday is coming up very soon. And I just thought maybe all of this is a sign that these socks were not meant to be their birthday present. Like maybe I just need to set this aside and figure something else out. This happens with impulse cast on sometimes. I'm pretty sure I grabbed this on the way to some performance or something where I needed to keep my hands busy. Or maybe it was on a work trip. I don't even remember. Speaking of work, I'm drinking water out of an AARP cup with a metal straw. I don't work for AARP, but we do a lot with them. And they're actually a really great organization. And I just wrapped up this program in another city that they were very supportive of financially. And the guy I work with said, "Oh, I got a bunch of stuff you can give to everybody." And when I went to the office, he handed me these 2 huge boxes filled with these big water cups, which I mean, it's like really sturdy plastic. It's really nice that you've got the reusable straw. It comes with a little cleaner, like a pipe cleaner so you can clean it out. But now I'm stuck with all of these cups because of course not everybody took one. So if you want an AARP cup and you're local, hit me up. Anyway, they're nice. And it's a good way to stay hydrated, having a big cup of water with you all the time. Anyway, so those socks, I could just tell it wasn't working. So I thought, you know what, this person would probably really like a gnome. And I was getting the itch. I'm enjoying the toy knitting and the miniature knitting and how it uses up some of the scraps and leftover bits of yarn that I have. So I thought, gnome it is. And then I don't have to worry about whether it fits a foot or some other body part, right? And I checked my Ravelry library. It turns out I had already purchased the pattern Here We Gnome Again by Sarah Shira. This podcast is not sponsored by Sarah Shira. I'm just a fan. So I don't know that you can tell real well from my crappy black and white printout, so I'll put a picture in here from her projects, but it's a gnome with a really beautiful twisted stitch cable pattern going up the hat and on the body. You've got the option of putting a pom-pom at the top of the hat, and then, yeah, I haven't looked into the beard and the arms yet, but the thing that's interesting about this pattern is that cable detail. So this is as far as I've gotten. You start with the hat. You start with the brim of the hat. And then when that's done, I think I'll be picking up stitches around the edge and working down for the body. But it's just, honestly, like working twisted stitches is kind of a pain. And you don't have any rest rounds. Like there's something to do every round, but watching the pattern emerge is just really, really fun. I'm using worsted weight yarn. This is Barocco Lannis. So it's the same pattern you do 3 times around the hat, 1 for each needle. I think you can see it. The yarn is Barocco Lannis. I don't have the label handy, but this is left over from a sweater I made for my daughter like 1.5 years ago. She requested a holiday sweater, and yeah, so it's mostly red, but it also has some evergreen and like a really pale gray contrast color. Really nice. So I'm using this for the hat and for the main body. Obviously there's plenty of it. And I found some cream color. I don't know what this is. It's wool. It might be wool of the Andes. It might be Cascade. I have a lot of wool, like worsted weight wool in about this amount. So I don't even know. This is maybe 30 grams just sitting in my tub in the basement. I have a really big tub full of worsted weight yarn. Mostly in quantities like this. Some full skeins, but many, many colors. So I would like to kind of use some of them up because it's a lot and it's kind of weighing on me. Anyway, I think that this goes really well with the green. This person really loves the color green, so I think it'll be nice. It almost has a holiday look because this is sort of I think it's called evergreen. But who cares? Who cares if it's not the Christmas season? I think a gnome will be just the thing. The pattern gives you the option of, you can use whatever yarn you want, of course, but she actually gives you some specs in terms of yardage and like finished measurements for worsted and for fingering weight. So I'm using worsted because that's what I had, and I didn't feel like working with really teeny needles and really teeny yarn this time. So I think, that the finished one will probably be fairly large. This probably won't get done in time for this person's birthday either, but at least it won't be a pair of socks that probably doesn't fit, right? Okay, that's it for works in progress, at least ones that I have to show. I have a couple other things that I haven't picked up in so long it's not worth talking about. But I do have a sewing project that I want to show you. And I shared my intentions about this earlier. So my daughter needs pajama pants. Yes, we're coming into warmer weather, so she doesn't need warm pajama pants exactly right now, but this is when I'm getting around to it. So what I decided to do was use the Luna pants pattern by Ray Hoekstra, which is not, like, she doesn't say these are for pajamas, I mean, but they work. Like, if you look at the drawing on the back, it's, you can see they're very basic in terms of design. So they have an elastic waist. They do actually include pockets. You can put elastic around the ankles, but my daughter absolutely hates when things are tight around her ankles. So I just left out the elastic and hemmed the legs. And I have intentions to make her many pairs, but this is the first one that I finished. These are so much fun. The fabric it's this very soft flannel, and it's like bright green, like yellow green, like lemon, lime, acid green with sheep all over. And she has tried them on and they're very comfortable. So let me tell you why this pattern is so good. Everything I've done by Ray Hoekstra, and I've made like 3 of her patterns for women or for adults, and 2 or 3 at least of her children's patterns. So I can tell you that her instructions are clear. The measurements are right on, and the pieces really fit together. So you don't have to worry about any of that. I did take my daughter's measurements. I had ordered the paper pattern because I really hate printing PDFs and taping them together. So I took her measurements. She was kind of between sizes. My daughter is taller than I am and definitely more of an hourglass shape. So she had a smaller waist size, according to the measurements on the envelope, than hip. So I, traced between those and graded it out, and seems to work out fine. One of the things I like about, so there's 2 main things that I like about this pattern. One is that there are pockets. So yay, they're in their side seam pockets, which I feel like is important for any pair of pants. You need a place to put your hands, and sometimes you need to stick your phone in there or whatever. So the pockets are really nice. The other thing I really like about it is that she has separate pattern pieces for the waistband facing. So you cut those out separately. And let me tell you, I barely had enough fabric for this. One of these facings I had to actually cut totally 90 degrees opposite from the grain that you were supposed to, just because I didn't have a long enough piece to make it work otherwise. But it just, when you are preparing the waistband for the elastic, making that casing for the elastic, having that facing piece just helps everything line up so much easier. You have the seam right up at the top, so you know exactly where it's going to fold over, and you don't have to worry about it getting wonky. It just works, and it's really not that much of an extra step to to have to sew that piece on rather than just folding over the top, which is what more basic elastic waist pants patterns will do for you. So I'm really happy with how this turned out. The thing about sewing, to me, it seems like what takes the longest is getting the fit right. So it took me a long time. I mean, I would be like doing this in little batches. So I would like work on it for 20 minutes and then I couldn't do anything for 4 days because I was too busy or whatever. But I took her measurements and I had to trace the pattern, and I had to cut out the pattern pieces on the stuff that I had traced it on. And then I had to cut it out from the fabric. And then, especially the first time you sew something, just checking the instructions and making sure I was doing stuff right, that takes a while. But now that I know the fit is good, And now that I've made these, if I don't wait for too long before I do the next pair, so I remember how it all goes together, because it's not complicated, hopefully the next pair and subsequent pairs will go more quickly after that. I definitely want to make this for myself as well. Because I'm a different size, I'll have to trace the pattern again for myself, but that's fine. So yeah, I'm very excited about this. Pretty sure she doesn't watch, but the owner of Blue Bar Quilts, which is our local quilt shop, her name is Gail, and she is absolutely lovely. She sold me this fabric, and when I told her what it was for, so I told her what it was for, and the next time I was in there looking for more fabric for more pajama pants, she laughed at me and she said, "Are you here for more pajama pants fabric?" Because, I was buying all this flannel, and that was obvious. But she was curious to know what pattern I was using and if it works. So Gail, I don't know if you're watching, but the Luna pants pattern definitely works for pajama pants, especially if you take out the ankle elastic. So that's what I have to say about sewing. I know this is running a little long, but I thought I would just take a couple of minutes to share what I've been reading lately. These are a little bit off the wall books because one thing I like to do when I go into our local library branch is check out the sales shelf. I think they take a lot of the books that are donated and they just resell them. So paperbacks are always $1 and hardbacks are always $2. And I love that because it's a way for me to find books that I may not have found otherwise. That money supports the library. If it turns out I don't like the book, it's not exactly much of an investment. And unlike borrowing library books, if you've purchased it, it will never be late. And I'm chronically turning books in overdue, which I feel bad about. Anyway, I found this book not long ago and I kind of tore through it because it fascinated me. It's called Let the Northern Lights Erase Your Name. Supposedly this was like it's a San Francisco Chronicle bestseller. I mean, it was reviewed really well. I'd never heard of it. It's written maybe in 2007 or so. But it's by Vendela Vida. And it's pretty dark in terms of the story. There's a woman who, she's 28 and her mother had disappeared when she was 14. So she has no idea where her mother is. And her father has just died. And in going through his things after the funeral, she finds her birth certificate and discovers that the man she knew as her father was not actually her father. And the name on her birth certificate is a name from Finland. So she goes to Finland to find her father. So there's a lot in here about the indigenous culture of Northern Scandinavia, the Sami, I'm not exactly sure how you say it, which I didn't know much about, so that was interesting. Just trigger warning, there is quite a lot in here about sexual assault, so if that is something that bothers you, you might not want to read this book, but it's very well written and very engaging and actually quite funny in some spots, so I enjoyed this, and I never would have thought to read it if I hadn't just found it on that sales shelf. Sometimes you find duds too, but this was a good one. Another one I found a while ago that I just started 2 nights ago. It's called Falling Leaves. This was $2 because it's a hardback. It's a memoir by Adeline Yen Ma, the true story of an unwanted Chinese daughter. This was written back in the 90s. And I'm not too far into it, but this woman is the youngest. She comes from a fairly prosperous family in China, and she was the last of about 5 kids, and her mother died when she was just 2 weeks old of an infection that she contracted after giving birth to her. So I guess she was considered bad luck, hence being unwanted. So I'm not too far into it, like I said, but her family story, there's some remarkable people in her family, and they were quite successful, back in the early 20th century. So this has been really interesting. I find that when I read things like this, I learn a lot about history and I learn a lot about other cultures that I otherwise would not have access to knowing anything about. So in particular, because May is Asian American and Pacific Islander month, among many other things. May is many things: mental health awareness, I think hearing and hearing loss awareness. I can't remember the exact name of it. So anyway, a lot going on in May, and I just happened to pick this up, and it's kind of a neat coincidence that I'm learning about some Chinese history and culture this way. We'll see how it goes. The part that I stopped reading last night was when the Japanese war was starting, so it could get dicey. Okay, I think that's all I have for you today. I will see you next time, and in the meanwhile, happy knitting. Bye-bye.